how to handle the ups and downs of this ball game. Let's throw it down to Zora with Coach Hammock.
Coach, I can sense that you need a moment. Top 5 opponent. This is NIU's first win against a top 10 opponent ever. And for people who need context, you wore this jersey. It's deep for you. Why?
You know, I'm so proud of our kids, the coaches, because everybody, they believed. They believed. And we came here and got it done.
You told your guys this week that you didn't need anyone to be a superhero or superhuman. They just needed to be their best. What kind of performances did you see out there?
They listened to what I said. I told them all week, we don't need luck. We just got to be our best. And they was their best today. And we was able to get it done.
Where's this emotion coming from for you?
You know, all these guys that have been with our program, been through the ups and downs, and they continue to fight. Yeah. You know, it's like they my kids. I'm happy for the adversity to push through. You know, no matter the situation, I just couldn't be more proud. I'm sorry.
No need to be sorry. Boneyard wins is what you call it when you all beat a top 5 opponent, a power 5 opponent. There was 70,000 people in here that probably didn't believe. Why did you all believe?
We got a veteran team, a bunch of guys that have been through a lot of different things, and they work together. Like we still are in college football. I know it's a whole bunch of other things with the transfer portal and NIL. We still have a family, and they believe in that family and doing things the right way. And I couldn't be more proud of them.
Congrats, Coach. Go celebrate.
Thank you. Hey.
All right. That's how we're going to kick it off 2024. It's the Mike and Rico show, the first episode, kicking it off in week 2. That is a clip from the head coach of the Northern Illinois University football team, pulled off a massive upset in South Bend over Marcus Freeman. College football madness has started. For some fan bases, it's already been a rough go of it, and that was the case today for Notre Dame. First episode, getting it going, brand new season. What are some of your thoughts going into the season, just overall? I mean, we'll get into specific teams and conferences and expanded playoff and all that good stuff. What are some just baseline thoughts going into the season from you, Mike?
I think the teams that we saw last year, they aren't there. There's a lot of teams that we thought were going to be top notch and look the best, and they haven't. So there's a lot of surprises, I think. And as that game showed today with NIU, it's like it's football, and any day if you ain't ready, we saw it with a lot of games. I mean, some people escaped, and some people have suffered losses. If you're not ready, I think football is really balanced, and it really shows the teams that have everything together, and the coaching to me is really standing out. The teams that stand out the most.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting this year to see who can answer the bell and who can kind of weather the storm, right? Because now schedules are a little different now. You're seeing some of these teams playing some crazy schedules. I know Florida's got a crazy schedule. Of course, they lost last week to Miami. Yeah. Don't necessarily look the part of a national contender, but their schedule is wild. So you're going to see a lot of matchups that you may see in the postseason. And in the SEC, you may see an SEC title game that's a replay of a regular season game that's going to end up being played a third time in the college football playoff because they expanded 12 teams. So it's going to be an interesting year. I think staying power, the major test is going to be which programs have staying power. We've been around the water cooler with this a bunch of times. You have your teams that you feel real comfortable with, your Georgias, your Alabamas, your Ohio States, I think Texas certainly, and we're going to get into that. But now it's like, what's that next tier? Who's that next group that has staying power? Is it Michigan? Didn't look like it today. Florida State, I mean, Definitely doesn't look like it so far this year.
Yeah.
Clemson, can Clemson jump into it? Notre Dame, I mean, we get excited about them almost every year, and there they are. You know, what other team out of the SEC is going to be a team that's there every year? Love what Nico's doing down in Tennessee. We'll see. They're kind of a perennial pretender in September, and then once October and November hits, they kind of dissipate. So it's going to be interesting to see who has staying power in this new landscape of NIL and transfer portal. Do you have any team that we haven't mentioned that you think has staying power?
I think you covered a lot of them. I mean, I think really it's hard to say staying power with a lot of these teams because some of them like Ohio State and somebody like Ohio State or even Georgia for that matter, I think really haven't played somebody that we can really truly test them on. Um, Now Georgia did play Clemson, I'll give them that, but that was kind of where I felt like they were overmanned. I want to see what these teams do when they match up with the talent. So I think you've covered most of them. The ones that maybe aren't staying power. It's hard to say staying power when there's so many games that we don't know a team's tested. Now I will say when I watch Ohio State and I watch Miami, those are very impressive teams, but I want to see what they do when they match up with teams that match them in talent. So that's kind of what I want to see, but I don't really think. I mean, I think there's a few out there that I feel really good about just by watching them the first few weeks, but I think overall, I think the main ones I think we know about. I think we've covered.
Well, let's go ahead and get into one school that we know has staying power, and that's going to be the Ohio State Buckeyes. Let's get into it.
Give again, Henderson jumps through, touchdown, Buckeyes.
So coming into the season, Ohio State is a team that people think is one of the best in the country. They've got one of the best collections of talent. Turn that volume down just a little bit so we can hear. Yeah, that was pretty loud. So they return Travion Henderson. They've got Quinshon Judkins, of course, a transfer from Ole Miss. And so they really have a running back tandem that's to die for. But this is the guy right here, Mike, and you covered it for years. This is the guy that they think is the X factor, the difference maker. Jeremiah Smith, freshman out of Miami, 6'3", 215 pounds, absolute phenom. Talk to us about Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, he's a demon. He's just physically well built as far as his body, and then what he does in and out of the routes is probably really special because you don't usually have guys that are that thick that move like him. He is just so good at getting in and out of routes, and then when it's time to turn on the jets, he can do it. But it's not just him. I mean, he is the focal point for me when I watch them in the passing game. But they have so many weapons in that passing game. I still want to see what Walker does when he faces a top defense. But overall, as far as weapons and top tier weapons, they have to be very high on your list when you're looking at teams. And they've been very impressive. They've done what you want to see them do when they play teams that they overmatch. They're burying them very quickly, and that's what you're kind of looking for. So they're a very explosive team, probably one of the most explosive offenses. If Walker is as good as advertised, they're going to be a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, we're just watching the highlights here, and this is the scary part about Ohio State is Quinshon Judkins is arguably the best back in college last year at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Arguably.
Yeah.
Travion Henderson is by all means a special running back in his own right. And here's Will Howard coming from Kansas State, who brings a rushing attack edge to Ohio State. They did not have that last year. They went to the portal. They kind of gave McCord the boot in a move that looked kind of nasty. They kind of scapegoated him a little bit, and they thought that they could improve their quarterback position. And they feel like they have with Will Howard. I mean, they are really going to be able to run the football, and they've got a threat with the quarterback there. And I know this is Western Michigan. Western Michigan's 0-1. Western Michigan is a team out of, I believe, the MAC, if I'm not mistaken. So this is not prime competition, but this is still a boat racing here. And the Buckeyes are just running all over them.
Yeah, it is, and they have so many weapons. Probably the best running back tandem on paper. going in the season with Travion and certainly Quayshawn Junkins, and then
Here's a third. I don't know
yeah,
who is this. Number 20. Who is this guy? James Peoples. All right. Enter the party, James Peoples. You get a tutty.
yeah,
You get a
they
tutty. You get a tutty.
yeah, and they're one of the ones that you feel like there's going to be staying power, but you also want to see what they do when they face somebody that matches or gets kind of close, because I think it's going to be really difficult for somebody to get close to the talent they have, because this is probably one of the most talented teams they've had in a long time.
That
It,
boy
it
is
it
slow.
it's so loaded, but
Oh,
I want to
I know.
see.
Did he really do the track finish? That boy was running a 4.940 and hit the track finish.
He's like,
No way.
I'm there. What's up?
Look at this. Look at this. You're running slow as hell. And you do that? Get out of here.
I guess when you play for
Golly.
Ohio State and you score that much, you can pretty much do whatever you want.
All right. Yeah, that was a little interesting there.
Yeah,
So that's the Buckeyes' first game. They absolutely clobber Western Michigan, 56-0. They look really good. Again, we have to see what happens when they face
yeah,
some competition. I don't know how much they're going to really see, though. I mean, we're going to get into this Oregon game upcoming here, and
yeah,
Oregon does not really look like they're on Ohio State's level. I mean,
yeah,
we'll get to our top 12 at the end of
yeah.
the
We
at
will.
the end of the show here, but man, let's mix it up here. Let's go to a fun game that I know everybody was very excited to watch here. I'm gonna pop it up here because I know this
I
is
think,
one that you're gonna get excited about.
yeah, I think I
I know
know
this is
which
one
one.
you're gonna get excited about. Let's go ahead and pop this bad boy in here and let's roll the tape, baby. Hey, Deion said they're gonna get after Dylan Raiola, freshman quarterback for Nebraska Cornhuskers. They're gonna get after him. Let's see it.
Nebraska brings 4. Sanders in trouble. Down he goes.
There's a whole lot of that.
Yeah, it was. I think he was sacked like 5 times today, and um, it's kind of the more the same of what we've seen. I mean, of Colorado and in the talking before the game, and then what time is it, and hey, what I do, and then when it's time to deliver, just I mean, one of the main things is how poorly coached as a whole this team is. Like some of the
Look at this
stuff,
throw right here.
yeah,
That's awful.
that's like that's like
I mean,
everything they teach you not to do. Like
crossbody, kind of leaning on your back foot from your own end zone. I
late,
don't like the route concept there. I mean, that's across the field. There's just too
and
much
and, and
field to
it's late,
cover.
and it's late, and the quarterback
Yeah.
has to see the DB that's there, and if you're there, you got to throw it out of bounds. You can't throw it right in front of them. I mean, so the ball plays. I just think with Colorado, when I watch them, I just see a very poorly coached team. I'm not trying to hate on the guy. It's just what it is. But it's like if you're going to talk, you need to go out there and show a product that's worth talking about. And to me, I'm not sure why people get so hyped up about this team of when they watch them, but it's like it's the same team. Offensive line's bad, um, and just the defense did better in the second half. They had a really good second half, but first half they just got smothered, and Nebraska just crushed them in the first half. But shout out to Dylan. I know Dylan well. I got to know him when he was a high school at Buford High School, and uh, for a true freshman to play in this game, I mean, I was pretty impressed, especially the first half. I was really impressed with what I saw with him, and he likes to. For the people that haven't noticed, and you see the clips, he likes to imitate uh, Patrick Mahomes, who's his kind of his hero
Yeah.
or his guy he looks up to, and he does a lot of similar things when you watch him play. But yeah, fun game to watch, and certainly one where I think Nebraska wanted to send a message. These two, I mean,
Mhm.
for those that don't know the Nebraska Colorado rivalry, that goes way back, and these
Way
two
back.
schools really hate each other. So I think Nebraska really wanted to send a message, and they certainly
Wow.
did, and they just jumped on them and really just. I felt after they got up 28-0, they just kind of shut it down, or just kind of cooled off the Jets, and weren't as crisp the rest of the game, but still a really good win for Nebraska, who's trying shout out to Matt Rule, who's with the job he's done. I mean, he's getting players in there, he's getting talent in there, and getting the number one quarterback or player in the country, and it feels like they're slowly. getting where he wants them to be, and I think it's going to be a program 2 years later that, man, they're going to be a problem for teams in the Big Ten. But he is Dylan is a
Nice
really
ball.
fun guy to watch. Just play quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things that I see with Colorado, and hey, we cover them because they're on TV a lot. I mean, this is
Yep.
a team that gets a lot of hype, and we get excited to watch them because I mean, it's pumped in your face all the time. We want to see, what they've got. Coach Sanders is said that this team would be improved. Said they'd be improved at the line of scrimmage. They went out there. They got Seaton, a 5-star plus tackle that you covered
Yep.
in depth. They went out there and got some more receivers. I like what they've got as far as a receiving core. But again, the LOS line of scrimmage, they just get their ass whipped up and down the field. Here's an example right here, 4th and inches. They're getting blown back. I mean, they're 3-4 yards in the backfield every time on snaps that matter. And they're getting stuff blocked. They actually come up with a great pump block here. But they're still getting kicks blocked. They're still not able to win on 4th down. And they're still not able to consistently stop the run. They're just getting blown off the ball. And I just don't see football being taught at a high enough level to take this team serious.
Yeah.
I think, Shador can throw a nice ball. That's a dot right there. He can throw a nice ball, but I'm just unimpressed with the mobility of this guy. And I think it's going to be a problem at the next level. His ability to feel the pocket is just not where it needs to be for a player that gets hyped on this level. And for a player that's going to be expected to produce quickly in the NFL, I just don't see it. I just don't see it.
Yeah, and this is kind of a recipe of what you're going to see when you get to the pros, where things are going to have to be quicker, and we see with obviously with his footwork, he is very, very slow, but just the stuff with the pick six, that's the kind of stuff you're going to see that's going to have to be quick, and I just think he's going to really struggle in the NFL just because of you got to have some kind of mobility when you go to the NFL. Even as a quarterback, you don't have to be fast. Everyone's got to be fast, but you have to be able to recognize stuff faster than. And he takes so long recognizing stuff, and then also he holds the ball a long time, and he hurts it. A lot of some of those sacks we saw were just, hey, they beat him and they whipped him and got sacked, but a few of those sacks were just he was holding the ball too long.
Well, we're going to move on now. Colorado takes a beat down in Lincoln, and they've got a ways to go. Game of the day, at least it was supposed to be. Texas comes into the Big House, very hyped up matchup. The defending national champion, Michigan Wolverines. Sharon Moore's first official game, first official big game as head coach here in the 2024 season. Of course, they won last week. And this was the story all day. 3rd and 13, big shot right there. Makari Page gets over late. It was a theme. Sarkisian just dialed up play after play after play and just owned Wake Martindale all day today.
Yeah, and I thought after this first kick, that was kind of a big lift for them. But then I figured they would settle down, and then I just felt like all day Michigan was trying to do stuff to really press, and then really it got behind when it was 7-3, and they really started pressing. But I was extremely impressed with Quinn Ewers. I was really impressed with this Texas team. You always felt like even when things were not going perfect, that they were in control. They were comfortable. They weren't pressing. They weren't doing anything that was out of control. It's like Michigan threw a lot of different things at them. Martindale blitzed a lot, a little too much for my liking, but I think overall, just they felt comfortable, and then Michigan had their time and turned this game where there was a Donovan Edwards run that could have broke it, and really I think kind of shift the momentum. But it's like those plays are ones that you have to hit, and Texas was hitting all of theirs, and Michigan just could not hit the plays that were there when it was open, whether it's that play and then the turnovers just really put this one where it turned into a blowout.
And this was surprising because it's not like Texas. Obviously, Texas has better athletes, particularly on the edge.
Yeah.
And here we go right here. 3rd and 2.
Yeah.
You're throwing the football. Michigan has owned the line of scrimmage for the past 3-4 years, and it's 3rd and 2, and you're throwing, and it ends up a pick. Donovan doesn't get the touchdown. They go down 14-3. Then they throw the pick. They end up giving 3 up right there. And it's just in this right here. I mean, this
Yeah.
just doesn't look like a team. And we talked about it at the beginning of the show, staying power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know Michigan lost 15 guys to the draft. I know
Yep.
they lost Coach Harbaugh. I know they lost their strength coach. I know they lost a lot. But this was alarming because there still is a lot on this team. There's still a lot of quality linemen. You got a guys on the cover of the NCAA video game here. I didn't see any plays made by the guy. Colston Loveton is supposed to be the best tight end in America. He's bobbling the ball, giving up possessions, and now it's a 17-3 game. Instead of going in and scoring, now you give them an extra possession, and look what a national championship level team does. They stick it right down your throat, 24-3. And at this point, the game's over. And
Yeah.
I just didn't see enough explosiveness from Michigan. And people think that explosiveness has to come from an air raid or 5 wide
Yeah.
or spread. No, you can be explosive playing power football. And I just didn't see it from these guys. Saw a couple plays from Davis, but ball gets bobbled up a couple times. He ends up throwing a couple picks. He showed some mobility. Michigan has a hell of a kicker with this Zaveda
They do.
guy.
They do.
But it's just they don't have that punch this year. And it's going to be really difficult to see them graduating from a team that's solid to a team that can really compete.
Yeah, I just think in a lot of ways, when I really think about this game, uh, Texas looked a lot like the Michigan that I remember when I watched last year, where they were
Yeah.
always, you felt like they're in control, they're winning the line of scrimmage, their offensive line was really good. And then I think in this game, Michigan to that 7-3 part, where they forced the ball on 3rd and 2, which was why are you throwing the ball? I mean, the coaching, I thought the decision making of what they were calling was very bad in key moments, and it really just killed them, getting them down in that whole 14-3, and then it was lights out because then Michigan went solely to the passing game, and just Davis was like, it was basically just tee off time. I mean, he did what he could, but there's like, that's not Michigan football. Like, Michigan football is ground and pound. That's what they do, and I think they got away from it. And I think the main thing for Michigan for the next few weeks is figure out, stick with what you are and what your program is, and because I don't think there's going to be a lot of success for Michigan if you're throwing the ball 30 or 40 times.
No, I agree. And I was disappointed to see them get away from the identity. Michigan football
Yep.
has been a power football team. And in this game, if I was Sharon Moore and I was Kirk Campbell, the new offensive coordinator, who's a passing game coordinator, who's graduated from passing game coordinator to offensive coordinator now under Sharon Moore. Sharon has turned over the keys of the offense to him. And I saw that today because I saw a lot more pass attempts. And to me, I just don't understand why that approach would be the one that you take. You're up against a powerhouse team in Texas. Texas hit the NIL market hard. I want to say they have a $25 million roster or over $20 million roster.
Yeah.
They're really, really good. They
Yeah,
stack the deck.
it's very good.
And you want to limit the possessions. You want to make
Yep.
this a rock fight. You want to
Yep.
make this a knockdown, drag 'em, backyard alley street fight. And Michigan, started dropping back and letting Davis Warren, who's got a nice story, but again, it's like we had some conversations with some folks today. I
Hmm.
mean, guys, this is no longer storybook college football. This is big money, big NIL. This is an arms race. And they don't have the personnel from the wide receiver room to the quarterback room to do the game plan that they did today. They abandoned it early. They
Yeah.
did try to go to Colston, but they're pushing the ball downfield to guys who aren't getting great separation and can't win 50-50 balls because they're 5'10, 5'11, 6 foot. You have no height out there at the outside. And to me, I voiced the frustration because I just don't understand. It's not about picking on Davis Warren. Davis Warren has done everything right. He's busted his ass. He won the job. But the fact that Davis Warren won this job speaks volumes. Because
Yeah.
why is there not a Quinn Ewers at Michigan, a Dylan
Yep.
Raiola at Michigan, a Cam Riley at Michigan, or Cam Ward, excuse me. JJ McCarthy goes to the NFL draft. It's the NIL era. Does $4 or $5 million keep JJ McCarthy in Ann Arbor? I think it does.
Yeah. It matters.
Where are we at?
It matters. And the other thing that we haven't talked about, like, not to call you out, Michigan, but that is like pathetic that that's the receiving core you have. Like that should not happen at a team that just won a national championship. Why that team has so much trouble getting top-notch receivers to go to it, I will not understand. First off, second off, I was really just I think if you gave me my biggest disappointment of the game, I was very disappointed in their whole the way they attacked Texas in the whole game. I didn't like the way they were attacking them from the start. Didn't like it. Didn't like what they were doing. And I think they got away from what they are. And now the good news about this game is you find out what your deficiencies are, and I think they can fix that stuff. And I think they will be a good team that can win like 9 games, but it was highly disappointing just seeing the game plan in general.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks.
Yeah.
One game that's going final now as we are recording is the USC game. USC 48-0. Of course, they're coming off the big win over LSU. Miller Moss has another 229 and a tutty. Looks like they're hitting the ground game pretty hard here.
Yep.
Michigan's got Arkansas State next week, and then they've got this game against USC. And I talked to some people beforehand, and I said, hey, this Texas game's a big game. I do not think Michigan's ready for this Texas team. I think it was going to be a 2-score win. Is kind of the overall synopsis that I was given. I have also said I don't think that Texas game was their most important game because it's not a conference game.
Right.
This USC game is monstrous for
Yes.
Michigan because this is a chance to right the ship. It's 2 weeks from now. This is a team that's not quite as loaded. They're going to be really good, and they're going to be better than Michigan on the outside skill position. But it's a team that Michigan, if they put a game plan together, they could win, or they could beat, and they could get on the positive side of this. They're going to beat Arkansas State. If they do, they'll be 2-1. If they beat USC, they're going to be 3-1. And then they can kind of get into the schedule a little bit and settle in. But that USC game is going to be monstrous. USC is about to go 2-0, 48-0 at home over Utah State. So we're covering USC too. But 2 weeks from now, USC Michigan, that's a big one. How do you see that one going?
Yeah, it's a monstrous game because it's kind of what I'm referring to. That's the game where Michigan's going to have to really establish their identity, what they are. It's like you want to ground and pound and mix in throws. And so we're going to see what they learn from this Texas game of getting away from what they're doing, because when they got away from stuff, it hurt them. And to the turnovers, I think that's the big deal. I think if Michigan doesn't turn the ball in that game, I like their chances to pull that out. I think Michigan will win. I like how Michigan runs the ball. LSU had a lot of success when they ran the ball against USC. So I think Michigan can certainly do that, but I think Michigan has to stick with what is their identity, and their identity is running the ball. I love number 20. I keep forgetting his name, Mullins, but I love what he does running the ball. I think Donovan can be good, but you have to keep those guys constantly, evolving in the offense. You can't just strictly go the passing game when you don't have receivers or top-notch guys you can depend on outside of Loveland. So I think as long as they get back to their identity and they don't turn the ball, I like their chances.
Well, going to go down some of the scores here. We'll talk about the number one team in the land, the Georgia Bulldogs. They go 48-3 over Tennessee Tech. Carson Beck, 242 and 5 TDs in the air. Travis Etienne played today at 78 yards. That Georgia team absolutely looked awesome last week. Very controlled against a Clemson team we don't really know about. Like Clemson in the first half was solid. I thought they blocked and tackled and they fit gapped and they looked athletically like Clemson's supposed to look. And then the second half happened and Georgia just kind of walked them down. So Georgia today didn't have much opposition. Tennessee Tech's obviously not going to give them a game. This was in Athens, and Georgia handles them 48-3. To skip down to what Clemson did today, Clemson had a home game coming off the Georgia loss. They go 66-20. Cade Klubnik throws 5 TDs, 378 yards. Maffa gets 118 on the ground and a score. To cover both of these teams, I've got Georgia as the number one team in the land because I think Carson Beck and everything else that they have brought back offensively, to include the acquisition of Travis Etienne, was Florida's best player. I just think they've got the guys that have done it. Now, prior to watching Texas absolutely dismantle Michigan, I didn't really think that there was any team on par with Georgia. I now have a different opinion because I think Texas is right there with them. But I would personally have Georgia number one. Spoiler alert, they'll be my number one team. Georgia defensively, there's just nothing lacking on that team. That team is a complete roster. And we're going to get into, when we do the final 12, we're going to talk about NIL transfer portal because I've got a soapbox I'm going to stand on. But Georgia looks phenomenal to me. Clemson, I'm not sure. Today, they looked really good. They looked kind of scary in a wide-open ACC that Florida State's not going to be a part of. It doesn't appear to be the championship, caliber teams. So Clemson kind of bounced back and changed my opinion on them a little bit today. I know it's App State at home, but what do you think about Georgia and Clemson?
I felt before the season started, Georgia would be my team to beat. I don't think there's anything that's changed that. I watched that team. I think the guy that we don't mention enough is Carson Beck in that offense. He's really, we talk about Ewers. He's kind of the other side of that on Georgia's side of, I think he does a lot of the same things that Ewers does. He's very good at what he runs, the way he runs that offense. Their defense is top notch. I think they're certainly going to be a team to beat. And I think with Clemson, when I look at Clemson, I see a very similar team to, what I did last year. That's not a downgrade. It's just what they are. They're really good up front. They do a really good job with their defense. I like their back end. They really fight for the ball. They showed that last year when they played FSU. Everything was really tough to complete passes on. So that, I think that's kind of similar to what they are. Maybe a little bit better at linebacker, but it's one of those wait and see thing of when they play FSU or other teams later in the year that can challenge them from a talent perspective. But I think overall, I have them in kind of a similar place of what I saw, last year. But Georgia definitely, for me, is a team to beat.
Well, running down some of these SEC scores, and again, we don't have the highlights from everybody because some of them are just too long and drawn out. Talk a little bit about Alabama, South Florida. Bama gets South Florida in Tuscaloosa now. If you remember last year, that game was in Tampa. It was the Milroe, benching game where they kind of flopped around the quarterback situation there. And it was an ugly win for Bama. And it was an ugly win again today. Final score is 42-16, but don't get too excited about that because this was a game in which Bama was really struggling. They scored 28 points in the fourth quarter. They go on a 28-3 run to make that 42-16. Milroe sub 200 yards passing, and that's kind of the question with bringing in Coach DeBoer coming from that kind of spread wide open 5 wide deal he was running in Washington. To bringing that down to Bama, Bama's more smash mouth pro style under Nick Saban. Today was a hiccup. I thought they looked good last week. I believe they played Western Kentucky and they rolled. This week was not so good, and they've got some things that they're going to have to work on because they do not look like Georgia and they do not look like Texas early in the season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a learning curve for them. Certainly they struggled today. That game was like a 3-point game in the fourth quarter, and then they pressed them and then finally broke through. But I think Jalen Miller is Jalen Miller, but they don't seem totally comfortable. They're hitting big plays, which you saw that in the fourth quarter, but there's not a flow to what they're doing yet. I think they're good. I think they will get there. I think as the season goes on, they'll get better as they did, last year. But I don't. I think it's going to be a challenge. I don't view them as like they're not up there higher than either Georgia or Texas when I watch both of those teams. So I think both of those teams are ahead of them. So I think there's some work to still do to get used to. But the good news for them is, they're a type of team that gets better. But with a new system, it's always a challenge. So until they play somebody tough, I think it's really we're not going to know.
Yeah, rolling down some more scores from the SEC, which is still the best football conference in the land. You've got Ole Miss, and this is a team, we talked about this team, Mike. Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin has got a squad this year. They lose Quinshon Judkins. For some reason, he transferred after all this success. There's been a lot of stuff said about maybe his fit from a cultural character. I don't want to, I don't want to go there because I don't know the kid. But there's been a lot of stuff said there. But anyway, Ole Miss still has some dudes. They got Parrish Jr. had 165 yards, 4 TDs today, so they're not hurting at running back. Jackson Dart goes for 377. They've got dudes everywhere. This offense can hum it. And if this defense can get it together, this is an SEC team to watch out for. They have a fairly favorable schedule this year, and all things considered, SEC is always going to be a tough schedule. but they have a fairly favorable schedule. This team, I feel like, is a playoff team. They go 52-3 over Middle Tennessee today, and yeah, Ole Miss, the Rebels, look out. I think this is the year that they finally break through and make some real noise.
Yeah, I think they could score a lot. And I agree with you about the defense. If that defense comes along and just is average or just a little above average of productive, where they're only giving up like 17 points a game and get to that point, I think they're going to beat a lot of teams. And their offense is one of the best in the SEC. And certainly my dark horse in that race when you talk about the top SEC teams, I think they're a team that we're going to hear people talk more and more about as the season goes on when people more eyes get on them, because I don't think a lot of people know just how explosive that offense is, and they're special. And so I think them and Tennessee are kind of in the similar boat when I look at both of those teams. So I'm high on both of them. I think Ole Miss is going to be a special team to watch.
Yep, blowing through a couple more SEC scores. Missouri, Ohio State remembers them from the bowl game. 38-0 over Buffalo, another top 10 team. This Missouri team, they bring back Cook, the quarterback. They've got some dudes here. They've got a great coaching staff. Again, it's kind of, you don't really know how to take them, but Missouri is going to be an interesting team. They go 38-0 over Buffalo today to move to 2-0. You've got, I know a game that you watched, and we talked a little bit about Tennessee. Tennessee goes into NC
Charlotte.
State. Yep, into Raleigh, a tough place to play, and they bombed them 51-10. Nico had an okay game, 211 in the air, 2 TDs, also 2 picks. But this Tennessee team, that's an impressive win because NC State is a place where undefeated records go to die, and Tennessee was up 20-3 on them at the half.
Yeah.
Came out in the third quarter, dropped 17, dropped another 14 in the fourth, and they put a 50 spot on the Wolfpack. How do you feel about Tennessee?
Yep. By the way, that game was in Charlotte. So they played it in Charlotte. But
Oh, that's right, Mayo Classic.
yeah, but I think the thing that I liked the most about Tennessee was the defense when I watched them. Um, certainly they had. I think their running game is also another thing that isn't as talked about. I was a little disappointed when I saw Nico. I thought I was expecting more, hit more explosive plays, but they made up for it, and that's how good they are when even when he's kind of not maybe as sharp as he can be. Their running game is really good. I think they had a really good game, but I really like that defense, and that's not something we characterize with Tennessee when we talk about them usually.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something I think they've improved a lot as far as when I watch that team. I think their defensive line is really improved a lot. I think it's a team that's going to be certainly a threat. But hey, until you guys show it when you play somebody that matters, nobody's going to believe it, and probably even me skeptical. As good as you
Yeah.
look today, but that's really the hangover on Tennessee is, can you show it when you play, the big boys or even the medium boys? When you have a big game, can you deliver? And yeah, if they can do
Yeah.
that, then they're going to be a team we talked about. I love their coach. I love what they're doing. They're recruiting very well. Their NIL is certainly through the roof, but I think the main thing is they got to find a way to showcase themselves in these big games.
They're going to get their chance. They've got the Gators coming up, I believe, in a couple of weeks, and that's a game that usually trips them up. Moving down to
Yeah.
Oklahoma. Oklahoma won a sloppy game at home today against Houston, 16-12. That's a team, when we talk about staying power, it's going to get real dicey for them. I'm
Yeah.
very interested to see how that team develops, but I know it's a power program, first year in the SEC. Houston's first year, I believe, in the Big 12.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Another Big 12 SEC matchup was Oklahoma State. I know a game you watched.
Oh,
They
yeah.
win in double overtime, 39-31 over Arkansas. Kind of a shootout there.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State, obviously, in the Big 12. One of the favorites to win the Big 12 along with Utah. And very good game there. Arkansas is just kind of one of those middling SEC teams, and they're going to be off to a 1-1 start. Oklahoma State goes 2-0. Staying in the SEC, I don't know if we have any more SEC games. That might be it. No, we do. LSU 44-21 home game over Nicholls State. LSU obviously coming off the disappointing game on Monday night, or Sunday night rather, against USC. They lost a really close ball game there.
And struggled a good portion of this game. It was like 23-21 at one point, LSU. So even Brian Kelly went on a, a tangent, went crazy,
Another
during
one.
the game. So I still think, I don't know, they remind me a lot of the team they had last year where they could score a lot, but they give up a lot. Man, whatever is they're trying to do on defense, it's just they got to figure it out. It's just not working. It didn't work against USC. USC scored at will against them. And last year they struggled to stop people. So that's something they're out to figure out. And it's really perplexing when you watch LSU because they have so many great athletes and so many great players, and
They do.
it's just weird. Something just hasn't clicked from the defensive side of the ball. But they got the job done, and they set up some big games coming up, and they'll be mentioned. I mean, because their history speaks for itself, and the SEC West. So they'll be a team that certainly people have to still reckon with. But I'm still unsure about how I feel about LSU based on what I saw the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, LSU is one of those teams that when we talk about staying power, we'll touch on it at the end of the show. That's one of those teams I have a question about. Seems like they're only good every 4 or 5 years. I mean, we got to go back to the Joe Burrow team for when
Yeah,
LSU was really good. And they get the hype every year. They get the recruits every year, and it's just not clicking. They just don't look like the top tier SEC teams. They don't look like Bama. They don't look like Georgia, and they don't look like Texas. And I know they've clipped Bama before.
yep,
In recent years, I know they've won that matchup, but that every week consistency is just not there.
yeah,
It's not there under Coach Brian Kelly, and there's no excuse for it to not be there because he has more than he's ever had. He did
yeah,
a phenomenal job, I thought, at Notre Dame, brought them to the playoff a couple times, although it didn't go well when he got there. He
yeah,
still got there with Notre Dame level talent, which is
yep,
less than LSU.
yeah.
And we're just going to have to see what LSU does.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder if the fit's there for Kelly. I just don't see a LSU guy when I watch Brian Kelly coach them.
Yeah.
But maybe he'll prove me wrong, but I just don't see that. But it's a team that's very week to week of how they look.
Yeah, blowing through some of the Big 12, and I know the Big 12 has kind of moved around. Big 12 honestly had a pretty interesting day. I mean, we talked about Oklahoma State beating Arkansas. Kansas State goes into Tulane and gets a win by 7. Kansas drops a game to Illinois. They go into Illinois,
Oh,
into Champaign, and they lose by 6, 17-23. I have a feeling about this Brett Bielema Illinois team. I think they're going to cause some problems because they play defense. I
mm-hmm.
watched them in their first game, and they had several picks. The DBs were flying around, and that Kansas team can score. They didn't score today. Of course, Luke Altemeyer is the quarterback for Illinois. That Illinois team, not ready to call them a dark horse sleeper yet, but I've got my eye on them. I think they're going to mess up some people's season.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good ball club. They get to win 23-17. Arizona gets a 22-10 ho-hum win over Northern Arizona. You just got to see what that Arizona team has. I know they've got Fafita. He didn't have the greatest of days, but they're kind of an up-and-down team. Transitioning from the Pac-12 to the Big 12 will be interesting to see how that pans out. You look at the Georgia Tech Syracuse game. I know you watched some of that. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
Tech had a huge win, went all the way to Ireland, got a big win over the Noles, and got another win last week, but they fall today to a Syracuse team led by Kyle McCord, 381 and 4 tutties. I guess Ohio State's fine with or without him, but Kyle McCord's fine with or without them too because he was balling today. Syracuse goes 2-0, 31-28 win. And then, of course, we've got to talk about the Canes because they looked phenomenal last week.
Yes.
They played Florida A&M at home. That was a practice, and it was a practice. It was 56-9. Cam Ward goes for 304, 3 TDs, firmly in the Heisman race up until now. You have any thoughts on some of those games? Anybody standing out in the ACC right now? I would think that Miami through 2 weeks looks really good. It's just kind of too early to tell because I don't know what Clemson's going to be yet. And Louisville, let me talk about Louisville too, because that's actually a team I think is a dark horse in the ACC, if you can call them that. They go 49-14 over Jacksonville State, a team we know very well.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Terrible memory. Tyler Show, 349 and 2 tutties. I tell you what, this Louisville team can score. They were good last year. Going into the ACC championship game, they were favored. I mean, Florida State obviously had a lot of injuries and whatnot, but that was a top 10 ball club. And they reloaded. They hit NIL pretty well, and they've got a really good team. I think they are the threat to Miami. I think Miami's got to go to Papa John's later in the year That's a game I think Miami drops. I think Louisville gets that one. How do you see the ACC shaking out?
Yeah, right now, I mean, you go by what you've seen. Miami looks like the best team to me when I watch that team up front. They're really good. They've improved a lot as far as on defense and offense, and that's what I look at. That's the first place I look is offensive line, defensive line. I think they've done a good job adding some nice pieces there. Obviously, having Cam Ward is a big deal, which probably he's probably the favorite to win the ACC Player of the Year, I'm sure. So I like what they're doing, but I think Louisville is a team that has a lot of speed, has a lot of weapons, got a quarterback they're comfortable with. But I also, I mean, I know we've talked about them already. But I would not sleep on Clemson. That defense is ridiculously talented, and their back end's really good. So they're going to be in every game they play. When they play somebody, because of that line in that secondary. So if they could get Klubnik to play consistently, I think that's a team that could win it all in the ACC. But for now, what I've seen on just going by, I guess the first 2 weeks, Miami is stood out the most to me.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I think Miami obviously looks good because now with the way that the college football is, I mean, when you can go out and get a guy like Cam Ward,
Hmm.
who got a fourth round draft grade, looked at some other schools, and decided to go with Mario Cristobal and down there in Coral Gables, and he brings that skill set, which was NFL caliber, had a
Yep.
fourth round draft grade, and the athletes that Miami has every year. If the coaching can improve and put them in better positions, that's a team that could be really dangerous. And again, we're going to talk about it here in about 5 minutes because we're almost
Yep.
done with these scores.
Yep.
But guys, in 2024 college football, you can go from shit to sugar like that because
Absolutely.
you can buy the players now. You
Hmm.
can buy them. It's no longer under the table. Here's an envelope. Go take your girlfriend out for a nice dinner. No,
Yep.
guys are making millions of dollars. Carson Beck got $4 million to come back to Athens. $4 million. He's making more than a lot of players in the NFL. And when it is like that, you can build something quickly. Cam is making a lot of money. There's
Yep.
there's a big range from 600,000 to 3 million is what they're saying. And when you can spend that kind of money and get a player like him, you can make huge jumps. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Miami is certainly a team that's going to be dangerous. We look at a couple other scores of interest. Iowa State hits a nail biter, hits a game winner, bangs in a field goal at the buzzer. They take the Iowa State-Iowa game. Big rivalry there. It was actually in Iowa too.
Yep.
20-19.
That's a hard.
Heartbreaker for the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, I watched that a majority of that game. I was flipping between that and I think the other games that were on, and that one's just heartbreak city. There's no other way to word it. They were leading the whole game. Like they led like the whole
Wow.
game. The whole game. And the only time they trailed was the final kick. And I always say this, and like I criticize kickers a lot, but man, I always say the most clutch kickers are the ones that come in there when you're losing, not when it's tied, when you're losing. And they were losing, and the guy had to get a 54-yarder, and he drilled it, and they got the job
Dude,
done, and won the game. And that's just that kicker. I don't have a lot of respect for kickers, but that's the one thing I respect is when they hit the 54-yarders when they're trailing. It's different. There's a different type of pressure when you're trailing and when it's tied. So if it's tied, you're not going to lose. But he knew if he missed that kick, Iowa State was going to lose, and he drilled it.
well, that brings us to the way we started off our show with the head coach of Northern Illinois
Yeah.
crying, and we're going to see why he cried. Coming fresh off a great win in College Station last week, where Notre Dame showed all three phases of solid football.
Yep.
Here are the Irish in their first home game of the season against Northern Illinois. Let's have a gander.
Yeah.
So it starts off here. I mean, we're midway through the first quarter. Here's Riley Leonard running a read option. Riley Leonard is a big, tough dude, and he scores here. So Notre Dame gets a relatively early touchdown,
Yep.
gets on the board. And you're just thinking that as this game wears on, they're just going to wear down NIU and kind of get a comfortable win, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, and this is kind of why this is part of the reason too of why I don't like playing a team like Texas A&M the first game, because you're playing a team in NIU who you're going to look at them and like, oh, we should win that game, and then there's always going to be your focus isn't going to be all 100% there, and it's just those sometimes those big national matchup games, it isn't the game that you're playing then; it's the game after. And
Very true.
I think NIU, credit to them, they just played their guts out, and they got it done.
Yeah, it's just a tough ball game here. I mean, Notre Dame, I mean, the first quarter they exchanged touchdowns here, but it just Notre Dame could never really get any type of separation. It was a game that you kept looking at the bottom of your ticker and you're like, God, they're hanging around, they're making plays. And Northern Illinois is a team that for maybe
Hmm.
10 to 15 years has been very competitive. And they have a chip on the shoulder when they play the big boys. They go up 10-7 here. And then you start to see this kind of deal with
Yep.
throwing over the middle. And it kind of goes back to the Michigan game, right? Like
Yep.
Notre Dame is a power football team that can really run the
Yep.
rock. They should be winning the LOS over these guys easily.
Yep.
And they're out here throwing across the middle. Now Notre Dame is down 6 points. They're trying to kick a field goal, and it's stuffed. And it wouldn't
Yep.
be the only one that got stuffed.
No, and the thing is, Raleigh had 2 picks on the day. Didn't have a really good day. His second pick was even worse than that first one you saw.
Yeah.
And that's what you do when you get out of your realm of what your comfort and your identity is. These kind of things happen, and to Northern Illinois, if we can't show the whole game, but
Oh,
yep, the old hurdle touchdown here.
steeplechase. Go hop
But
over. Hop over, bitch.
what happens is like NIU was really sucking the wind out of the whole game because they ran the ball a lot. It's a very predominant run team. You watch a lot of their stuff; they do a lot of mix, fear stuff, and they ran the ball a lot. So they sucked a lot of the possessions out of Notre Dame. And I think Riley was forcing plays that just weren't there.
Here, I mean, a perfect example of what exactly you just said there. You're up, okay?
Yep.
Why are you not smashing the football on these guys?
Look at the time. Look at the time left in the game.
Like, you just don't take that type of risk because the worst case scenario, you don't convert, but you pin them deep. Now they've got the ball here
Yep.
halfway through, and here we go. You know, I just don't get the mentality offensively. 36 seconds left. Here's a 35-yarder for NIU. They bang it through,
Yep.
and now you've got to go pull off some magic if you're Notre Dame.
Yep. And it's just you. I always say when you're a team that's in NIU's position, or last week of Boston College with FSU, all you're trying to do if you're the underdog is put pressure on the other team to do something they're not used to doing. And I think NIU executed that perfectly. I think Boston College did that last week with FSU. They executed stuff where you put stuff in position they don't do. I don't know why they're kicking a 61 yarder with a guy that can't make a
Get
38
down.
yarder. But
Smart.
just but this is why we watch college football. This is why we love college football. That moment of watching that of anybody can beat anybody, and like I said, once you put pressure on somebody, you know, guys tighten up and guys do stuff that they don't normally do. We saw that in the Michigan game, and now we see this in this game. It's just a different way of as far as talent, but overall, it's just it, guys. Me and Rico talked about this after the game in Ireland. Like, it doesn't matter who you're playing; these are D1 athletes. So if you aren't ready and you do stuff, you make mistakes. Other teams are going to make you pay.
Yeah, this was a shocker.
It's the shocker of the year. I mean, there's no question. There's not a bigger shocker, I think, at any game this year that's bigger than this.
Yeah, Notre Dame is a team, and I had just been going off about this because I think Marcus Freeman,
Yeah.
I think he doesn't get the type of attention. And I mean, the elephant in the room that has been the elephant for the last 10, 15 years is black coaches in both the NFL and college football getting opportunities. And I'm not a Notre Dame fan, but I respect the brand and I respect what they represent. And the fact that you do have an African-American coach coaching the biggest brand in college football, I think matters. And he doesn't get any attention. We talk about Dion, we talk about Shades, we talk about this swag, right? We don't talk about Marcus Freeman, and he's coaching on the biggest stage. And it's like you fight, you try to get the attention there, and then you have that happen. And I mean, hey, they only gave up 16 points. Defense looks like they did their job, but he has got to make better decisions with who he's bringing in for coordinators, because he's at Notre Dame and you've got great athletes. You've got all the resources in the world. And this isn't the first time he dropped a home game against Marshall.
Yep.
And these are games that they just should not lose. They're too good of a program. And, look, we talked for years about Michigan being a team that should do something and never did anything.
Yep.
And the last 3 years, 3 Big Ten titles, whooped Ohio State 3 times. They got a natty last year, 15-0. They got off the schneid. Notre Dame, when is it going to happen? When are you going to get off the schneid? When are you going to have a season and do something to earn the recognition that you carry with you everywhere you go? When you come into a recruit's living room with the ND on your chest, it gets instant respect. When are you going to earn it again? When are you going to earn it again?
Yeah, it's just happening too much. We talked about the Marshall game, and then we talk about this game, and then they had Ohio State beat, and they screw that up at the end of the game when they're playing them. It's like you can't keep failing in these moments from a coaching perspective. And Marcus is the one that's got, unfortunately, he's the head coach, so he has to take the brunt of it, and he's responsible. He accepted that today, and that's fine and dandy, but doesn't make anybody feel any better. I mean, he has to deliver in those moments. You have to make better coaching decisions, and you have, whether it's a new offensive coordinator, you have to get somebody to run your stuff right. And this is like the second or third time we've seen them in tight games where they're just not showing anything on offense. Like, it's just poor, really bad.
Yeah, Notre Dame has been the biggest disappointment of the day. This is a team that I had pegged as a playoff. It's going to be hard. I mean, I know they want to keep that team in the hunt because it's a big money deal. And this is the part of the show where we kind of just break down things on the whole. And, there's some things that we didn't touch on going into last year. Of course, probably a little partial to Florida State, or a lot of partial. But looking back at it, that was a team that deserved to go to the playoffs. They were good enough to go to the playoffs 4 times previously in the 10 years. Teams had gone in there with their second string quarterback through injury. There was no extenuating circumstance that was valid at all to keep them out. But looking back in retrospect, I get it, because now it's a money deal. It's a brand deal. Texas brand bigger than Florida State's brand. Alabama brand bigger than Florida State's brand. And that's what it's about now. So when I talk about Notre Dame, they have a huge brand. The college football playoff is going to want them, and they're probably going to leave somebody out if they get the opportunity to put them in.
Yep.
And it just bothers me because Notre Dame comes in there with that privilege, and they've got that privilege every year, won't join a conference, don't have to go play a conference game. And you guys continually do this shit. It's a home game against NIU.
Yep.
You got to win that. Marcus, you got to get that done. Guys like me are fighting for you, and you make us look foolish because you can't get it done against NIU at freaking home. You go out there, you hit a home run in the transfer portal with Riley Leonard. You've got guys on the outside. You've got backs. You've got linemen. You've got a defense. It's a defensive coach. He's a defensive coordinator at Cincinnati. He was a hell of a defensive coordinator. Defense shouldn't be a problem, and it doesn't appear to be. But your offense sucks. That's got to change. And it's just ridiculous that Notre Dame can't get a coordinator in there with all that tradition and all the privilege of being Notre Dame to put up more than 14 freaking points at home against NIU. And you're penciled in as a championship team. You're penciled in as a playoff team.
Yeah, and that's another team that I feel like they don't get enough game-breaking receivers either. If you watch their offense, they get some talented athletes, but it's not a game-breaking receivers like the ones you see at different other places like Tennessee or Ohio State or those places. So, I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, why aren't you getting that? You're a national brand. Everyone knows about you. You shouldn't have a problem getting it. You shouldn't have a circumstance that why you can't get your national. Everyone should want to go there. So, yeah, I think Marcus is going to have to make some tough decisions, and he's going to have to get somebody in there that has an explosive pedigree of offense of what he does. I mean, that's keep it straight to the point. He has to do that because otherwise, I think this thing's is just going to eventually just fall apart for him.
Well, now we're going to look at the rankings here. A couple more thoughts just about the direction of college football. And again, we have gotten into this, and I was a proponent against NIL, against the transfer portal And I don't speak from some high ground of being some monster player. I walked on, got a couple snaps, been around it a little bit, know a little bit, and dabble, and know some people who know a lot of it. So my opinion is but one opinion, but I really have been concerned with the soul and the sanctity of college football. Because before there was pay for play, there was all that. It was kind of under the table. If you got caught, you got spanked.
Yep.
And unless you had the juice like in Alabama or Georgia or something like that, most of the time when you did something that was improprietous, you would get the spanking. Now it is the wild, wild west. Texas is hosting recruit weekends with Lamborghinis outside. They have a $20+ million payroll for NIL.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that now it changes the entire landscape of how you measure programs. And I said this, I don't think that players really matter that much. Singled out. Of course, you have to have a collection of players because you got to have talent. But one guy is not going to be the big difference. One coach is not going to be the big difference. Programs are now going to be measured on their fiscal and their financial ability and stability. How is your money? How is your money? Is your program run like a business? Do you have people who do the underwriting for all of your NIL contracts? Do you have talent scouts? Do you have talent evaluators whose only job is to surf YouTube all day long and find different guys that could potentially fit your system? People that understand who's in the transfer portal, who's not in the transfer portal. This is all stuff that's got to be done in season. Because let's be honest and cut the shit, right? Tampering? They're tampering right now. If you don't think the University of Georgia is tampering right now, looking at who's going to be the quarterback to replace Beck, if the guy they've got behind him right now in-house ain't it, you're in the clouds, as we've been talking about today, people being in the clouds. That's called being in the clouds because that's how the game's played now. When I say games are won and lost in January in that transfer window, they're won and lost in January in the transfer window. If your money's not right and you can't go do what Ohio State did, which is get Will Howard, get this guy, bring this guy back, bring Travion back, go get Quinshon Judkins, go make sure that you get Jeremiah Smith when everybody in the country wants him. You take some money and logistics to do that. And Ohio State can do that because they're financially, fiscally as sound as anybody in the country. They want for nothing. Their fans will pay. They'll do whatever. And that's college football now. I hate it. I fought against it. I beat my fists against the cement wall that is the ignorance of this NIL transfer portal just movement, but it is futile. It's futile. Like, this is the way we're going. So if you don't like NIL and you don't like the transfer portal, go watch water polo because it's here. And you need to measure your program on its ability to swim in these new waters because they're choppy. Okay? You better get you a big boat.
Yeah, and the thing is, these programs are going to be run as a organization. Like, the Dallas Cowboys or the Pittsburgh Steelers are an organization. You're going to have to run it. So when you pick talent, you got to make sure it's right for your team or you're going to suffer. We see our Knowles suffering through that. They didn't choose right. And we see the cost, the pain of it. Same thing with Florida. They look bad. They didn't choose right. But they're so you have to make sure you hit it right. And here's the facts, guys. You want your program to be good, you're gonna have to spend the cashola, like money. You got to get the money right in your program. Where NIL overall or how you spend the NIL, it's just the way it is. Do I like it? No. But is it an adjustment? Yeah, it's an adjustment for everyone. But if you want to make your program good, you're going to have to spend money and put value into your program.
Absolutely. We can touch on Florida State a little bit. I know we spent, what was it, $2 million on our defensive line?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can't tackle anybody.
Nope.
We can't blow up anything. We can't block fit. We can't do a lot of things that we need to be able to do. And, we're not going to get on the tangent of Florida State football because it's a mess right now. But that's just an example of what Nick Saban said, and I love Nick Saban because Nick Saban is just – he's just the most brutally honest.
Yep.
And he gets it. He's won at the highest level. And was he paying players at Alabama? You're damn right he was paying players at Alabama. Mike, you know that for a fact. But he was able to get away with it and do it in a fashion in which, it didn't hurt the program. And he said it best. He said, NIL's cool, and you can pay players, but if you pay the wrong players, you're SOL. Well, we're finding that out in Tallahassee because we've got $4 million in the defensive line, and we can't stop a soul.
And that's what I talked about a few minutes ago is you have to it's a business. It's like running the Cowboys or the Steelers or the Lions or whoever your program is. You have to make sure whatever you're purchasing or you're valuing, they have to be the guy that you know for sure this is going to work. Because if you don't, it's going to show. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of these teams that we haven't even talked about them that much as Oregon struggling because Oregon, everyone picking Oregon to be good, and Oregon looks like crap. I watched that most of that game. That's not a top 10 team when I watch that team. So it shows when you don't make the right picks and getting stuff done. And the teams that did get it right, it's showing. Ohio State, Ole Miss, Georgia, all these teams that are doing it right. These are the teams that we're mostly talking about all the time. So it's not a secret that we're talking about the teams that are doing the best job as far as value in NIL and they're hitting on the guys that they get from the portal. Got to make sure, and not only the portal, but guys that are in their program that they're paying, they're making sure that they value them and taking care of business.
Yeah, that Oregon game came down to the wire. They kick a field goal. They end up beating Boise State in a back and forth game. And that kind of brings me to my top 12. We were going to do top 10, but for the purpose of the playoff, we'll make it 12. Why not?
Okay.
30 dozen. And we haven't talked before, so I don't know if Mike's is going to jive with mine and vice versa. But I'm going to name off my top 12, and then we'll get into our way too early Heisman runnings. Number one team in the country I've got is Georgia. I've said that. I've been pretty openly about that. I think Texas is on their heels. I think Texas can play with them. I do think Texas will beat them in Austin, but they will have to beat them twice, which I don't think will happen because they will see them again in Atlanta. Georgia's number one team I've got in the country. Texas number two. Ohio State, hate to say it, but hey, got to give respect where it's due. They have a hell of a team. Ohio State's number three. My number four team right now, and I'm going off the map a little bit, is Ole Miss. I really think that Ole Miss team is going to be really, really, really good, and their schedule is going to bode well for them. Number five, I've got Alabama, a little shaky today. I think they'll figure it out. Number six is a team I know you like a lot, Utah. Cam Rising, hopefully his hand is okay. Went to the locker room at the end of the first half, had some blood on his hand. I'm not sure. You got to have to look that up and see, make sure that that's nothing long-term. That's my number 16. My number 17, Miami. I think Cam Ward changes everything for that team. I'm not ready to call them a national championship threat. I do think they get into this playoff, and they may get into this playoff with a bye, being the ACC champion. Number 8, Tennessee. I think that Tennessee team is better. It's more complete. I think if they have a defense and this Nico guy hits, which they're paying him $1 million, gazillion, $1 billion, he's got to be good for the money that they're paying him. No excuse not to be. I think this Tennessee team could make some real noise as well. Number 9, you're getting the theme here, more SEC, Missouri. Missouri, I think, could be a good team. That's a team. I know Ohio State had some guys sit last year, but Missouri really took it to Ohio State, shut them down. Ohio State's 2s on offense would be 1s pretty much anywhere else, and they couldn't get anything rolling on Missouri. That team is tough. And then I round up my back end with a bunch of Big Ten action. I've got the Oregon Ducks. They're going to have to look a lot better than what they look today. But let's be real. College football loves Oregon. It's a huge brand. Phil Knight's very powerful. If Oregon can be squeezed in there, even if they have 2 losses, maybe even 3, they will be in there. Penn State is a team that's supposed to be good. It's a team I got to see. I thought they looked pretty good against West Virginia last week. Did not look that great this week. They end up getting the win. Penn State's a team that does not play Michigan this year. They get a pretty decent Big Ten schedule, if I'm not mistaken. They win a couple home games. Penn State could be sitting at 10-2. As of right now, I got them the number 11 team. And the number 12 team, I've got USC. I think USC was kind of slept on. Miller Moss at back at quarterback. He blew up the bowl game last year. I think USC is going to make some noise. Already got a big win over an SEC West team in LSU. Again, we talked about it earlier. That game 2 weeks in the Big House is going to be massive for both of those teams. Michigan maybe can climb back into this 12 if they get that win. That's the top 12 that I've got. I don't know if you have any variation to that, but that's mine.
Yeah, I got just a few variations, but it's kind of similar. Number one, I think we're in all agreement. I think we're number one and number two. I think we both feel the same. I have Georgia number one. I think Texas is number two, and and the reason I put Texas as two is because they've beaten somebody and win the Big House and dominated.
Yeah, whoop their
Ohio
ass.
Ohio State's three for me. When I look at that
Yeah.
team, I just see a very close to complete team when I look at that team on talent, but they haven't played anybody yet, so I don't know what they are. um I'm gonna put this next team up a little higher, and it pains me to say this, but four for me would be Miami. I just like what that program looks like now. Um, I would I probably should have them lower just because I do not think very highly of Mari Cristobal's coaching ability. I
Mhm.
don't. I think it might hurt them later as the season goes on, as more people see them. But I
Yep.
think that's a team that I when I look at teams, I look at the trenches, and they've been very good in the trenches based on what I've seen.
Hmm.
So I think they stand out. Just what I've seen in the trenches, certainly subject to change, guys. Trust me, it pains me to even mention them that high, but I think they really impressed me when I watched them. I do say the one thing they can't have is Cam Ward getting hurt in any capacity. They could not lose that guy, or it's just forget it. They're not even in my 12 if that happened. They would certainly be up there. Five, that's a tough one because there's a lot of teams that fit into that mixture. But I'm going to go on a limb, and guys, please do not screw me over this time. Tennessee 5, show me something, beat somebody good. I'm still kind of skeptical, but I'm going based on what I'm seeing, and a lot of this theme is defensive line and defensive play of what I've seen. So that's kind of my thing. Most of the others, I think they're similar for me, Rico, and I think the only one that I would probably throw into that group in that 12 is Clemson. I think Clemson plays so well defensively that they're going to be a problem for a lot of people if they can. If club that is a very really unknown team because of my thing is the development of Klubnik. If Klubnik's development is there, I think that team is probably going to win the ACC championship because I love their defense. I think they have the best defense
Yeah.
just based on any team I've seen in the ACC. But that's a team I would have in that top 10 range. Um, I'm sorry. I know Oregon's going to be in there, but I watched them today, and I just don't see a top 10 team. I know they're going to put them in there, so I'll throw them in the 12, whatever. Throw them where you want, 11 or whatever. I just that team has to seriously improve because I think there's some serious question marks with that team when I look at that team. So I think there's about a 6, 7 group of teams that are top tier, and I think the other teams that you said and I covered, I think those are ones that we really don't know about because they haven't really either
Yeah.
they've been disappointing or they haven't shown much.
Yeah, I mean that's your take on it. I think some teams, and so we're going to do the top 12. But really, if I had to give you national championship caliber teams, I really only see three
Yeah,
right now. I don't
yeah,
think Miami's a serious national championship team. That's why I've
yeah.
got them at 7. To me, it's Georgia, Texas, in Ohio State.
I
I
agree with
think
that.
those are the three rosters, and really, I think it's Georgia, Texas. I don't think Ohio State beats either Georgia or
I agree.
Texas.
I agree.
And that takes me to my Heisman, my top 5 Heisman. Starting off with the guy who absolutely shredded the Wolverines today. Quinn
Hmm.
Ewers looks like a dog. The way he stepped up in the pocket, the way that he was able to be poised under pressure. Wink Martindale comes over from the Ravens and he blitzes like an MFer, and he threw everything but the kitchen sink and
Yep.
a 64-ounce bottle of Drano at Quinn Ewers, and Quinn just like, yeah, brushed it off, delivered balls on third down, delivered back end zone throws, corner throws. That guy is really sharp. He looks really good, and I think he's going to be a high draft choice. He is my favorite for the Heisman. He's got a big Heisman moment already, and just a masterful performance today. Number 2, I've got Carson Beck. Carson Beck has not been really tested yet, but, I mean, he was solid against Clemson, who's got a good defense. Georgia's just so strong, and kind of that game got away from Clemson, but Carson Beck in his own right is so doggone good. He uses his weapons really well. He's got great pocket presence. He's really just a field general out there. Carson Beck is going to have his opportunities to make some statements. And again, he's going to bring those Georgia Bulldogs into Austin to face Quinn Ewers. I cannot wait for that game. That is one of the best games on paper that I can remember in the past 10 years, honestly. And I'm not just trying to blow it up. I don't have a dog in the fight, no pun intended. But that's going to be a hell of a game. Can't wait to watch that. Those are the top two. Number 3, got to put him in there, Cam Ward. Cam Ward reminded me of Charlie Ward when I watched him in Gainesville last week. That throw he had for point number 38 off his back foot, crossbody, back end zone was simply freaking elite. There's only a couple people who can make that throw. He might be the only one in the country who can make that throw. That kid has an incredible ceiling, and Miami has a very high ceiling as a result of him. I'm going to throw Jackson Dart in there because I think it's his 3rd year in the system with Lane Kiffin, and he's going to put up dummy numbers, and their schedule and their opportunity to jump people is going to be way up there. And I'm taking Milroe out, and I'm putting in a guy who's played football for like 8 years now. They're the favorite in the Big 12. They looked good today until he got hurt. Cam Rising, if he can stay healthy, Cam Rising is going to have a huge year. And I know you've got Utah as kind of a dark horse and a team that could make some noise. I've got on my number 6 team in the country. So that's my top 5 for Heisman. What say you?
You nailed that's like Rico's reading my notepad. 4 of them were exactly the same. The top 4, we have exactly the same. I'm going to do something different, guys. I'm going to give you somebody that nobody is probably going to pick. And this will be a shocker to a lot of you. But I think this guy, every week that I watch this guy play, it's dynamic play after dynamic. And I think he's going to be on Sports Center almost every night. And that's Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. I love what he
every
does.
year it's an Ohio State receiver.
Hey, all you got to do is pick one. I have covered this guy and I've watched him, but Rico, he looks different than a lot of guys that I've seen. Just the how physical big he is and what he does in and out of routes. I just think he's going to be on Sports Center all the time. I think he's going to be a guy that you hear that move up there. And if I was picking a dark horse, I think the quarterback for USC is one that I really like a lot. I think he's good. I think he's going to be a dark horse that people talk about. But those are kind of my 5.
Well, that's going to wrap up the first show. It's been a good one. I think we're about 17 minutes over. We'll work on it, but we gave you a lot of good content.
Trying, guys.
Broke a lot of stuff down. There's just so much to talk about. I think going into this new wave of college football, it's going to be a transition. And I just, I'll leave you guys with this. You've got to really understand the direction where college football is going. It's Mike's profession to cover it from a recruiting aspect, and between his profession and experience that I've been blessed to have, and the people that we talk to, I just can't stress enough. You need to measure your program with the new parameters of college football. If your program is not thinking like a Fortune 500 company, you will not win shit anymore. Excuse my French, but I mean it. You won't win anything. If you are not thinking of your bottom line, if you are not creating $20 million of funds for NIL, you're not competitive, because that's what Texas is doing. That's what Georgia's doing. That's what the top dogs are doing. I mean, that's what Alabama's doing. Oregon wants for nothing. Ohio State wants for nothing. So these programs that are trying to be those programs that have staying power, your Oklahomas, your Michigans, your Clemsons, your Florida States, teams like that, if you want to be a part of this, you had better jump into the NIL, and you better get serious, because I guarantee you Ole Miss is doing it. And that's not a team that you think about, but that's a team that's doing it. Miami, this is a model where when it's just coaching and it's traditional recruiting and it's building your program and it's being disciplined, Miami has been completely irrelevant for 20-something years. But now it's changed. Now you can go out there and throw some money and go pay for a guy, and boom, here's a brand new team. It's like the transfer window in world football and the English Premier League. You could just go buy a guy. And in that type of environment, Miami has a lot of money, and they could run it like a business. And now they could matter now. They're not alone. There's a lot of teams that could matter now that didn't matter before. And for all you people out here who are college football fans, and you ride or die with a program or a couple programs, and you want to know where you stand, you need to look at it. Where does my program fit as far as a Fortune 500 company if I'm looking at it through that lens? I talked about Michigan. We've talked about Florida State. I know Florida State has got somewhere in the ballpark of $12 to $14 million in NIL. They're paying the wrong guys, and it's not working out well. They got to reevaluate that. I know Michigan has been super slow to get into the NIL, and I think they've done a good job putting a good team together. I think Michigan's a good team. Just don't think they're elite. But going into next year, I was reading that they got $23.4 million that they're going to use for NIL funds, and they're jumping into it with revenue sharing from the university. That's what needs to happen. If you want to compete, you have got to do that. If you're not doing that, your season is already going to be over come January.
And you got to utilize your value too. You can have that 23 million, but you have to use it properly. You have to make sure whatever guy you go get, you better make sure you've done a lot of study and research on how the fit is there. And hey, this guy's going to mix in and perfect and fit into our organization. Because if you don't, you're going to be FSU.
Right. And we're going to get into that when we specify. But you know, and again, and lastly, I just want to hammer this point home. You know, NIL, I was a proponent against it. I hate NIL. I thought they should have done a stipend system for student athletes, so student athletes could have the things that the rich kids that are not on scholarship have, and rent them cars, whatever, give them stipends, give them grocery stipends. I thought that's the process that they should have went through. I was told I was an idiot, and I just was hating and didn't want to see people get paid. Whatever. Now NIL is completely out of control.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, guys. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And NIL is no longer the problem because the big boys handle it. Texas handles it. Alabama handles it. Oregon handles it. Georgia handles it. I didn't see any lack of effort out there in the big house from Texas. I didn't see it from Michigan either, but I didn't see it from Texas. And Texas is probably the number one NIL school in college football. Those kids played hard. They ran around. They did all the stuff. So if the big boys can handle it and there's not an effort issue, and you're looking at NIL as an excuse for, say, I don't know, a Florida State where you're having these lackluster performances and you got high-paid players that are not making any plays, it's not an NIL problem. It's a you problem. Your ass doesn't know what to do with NIL. You're paying the wrong people. You're mishandling the funds. Yep. And again, you have to look at your program in the scope of, are we being run like a Fortune 500 company? Are we paying the right guys? Are we earmarking enough funds to be competitive in the NIL market? And are we maintaining our culture? Because I'll tell you what, the Hook'em Horns have that culture rolling in Big House today, and they pay more money than anybody does. So it's going to be a constant theme.
Yep.
Look at your program and make sure that you're doing the right things and it's being run like a business, or you will not see them in the top 12, and you damn sure won't see them hoisting any type of crystal ball.
That's true.
That's all we got. Signing off. This is Rico from the Mike and Rico Show, and we appreciate you guys. And it's going to be a fun year for most fan bases. Maybe not so much for some other ones. But you guys stay blessed, and we will see you again next week. Signing off.